Welcome to Butcher Block Horror Podcast,
Yo.
where we exhume horror movies from the past and cut into what makes them so delectable. I'm Kane,
I'm JD.
And I'm Joe.
and today we're throwing Shaun of the Dead onto the slab and carving up our favorite portions to force feed to you, our unwitting victims. If you enjoy the taste of these feasts of fright, then leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you do the YouTube, make sure to do all the liking, subscribing, and clicking of the bell.
Do it.
To it.
You can also visit our website. We give you brainworms.com. This is where you can get access to our Funky Fresh Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
If you got the extra scratch, throw some our way via the Patreon link on our website.
Scratch our backs.
We are members supported by viewers like you.
When you say it like that, it feels like a PBS thing, and I don't feel like we're offering what PBS offers.
You're not wrong.
Like an after-school special?
I mean, it's more than that. PBS is a pretty important service.
We do not provide that service.
No,
We provide information on horror films.
it's not a good service, though, because we don't provide good information.
It's good information. It's just horror films. This isn't a debate. We're important. We matter.
We're kind of like public television. We talk about like literature and cinema.
The cinemas.
I hate this.
I consider us edutainment.
Okay, whatever. We're Shaun of the Dead is the movie we watched.
Yeah.
Let's work our way through this. JD, tell us a little bit about the movie. A little bit. I don't need you to drag this on for 4 years, all right?
Oh, yeah.
You're
Okay.
coming in real hot today, King.
Yeah, red hot.
Fuck, I am. Sorry.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead. A comedy zombie movie. A classic, if you will.
Yeah, it was like a rom-com zom, or rom-zom-com.
A rom-com.
A zom rom-com.
Rob Zombie.
A Rob Zombie.
A Rob Zombie.
Oh, my God. Let's not.
None of that, please.
So yeah, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, shot over the span of 9 weeks between May and July of 2003. Couple release dates, London, March 29th of 2004, and September 24th of 2004 in the United States. This film has a runtime of 99 minutes with a budget of $6.1 million and a box office return of $30 million. So this film was pretty successful, and
It deserved it.
it really did.
Yeah, it was pretty well done.
I feel like a lot of horror movies, especially zombie films, tend to act as a little bit of a barometer of society's anxieties.
Mhm.
Because, I feel that, big catastrophic event of 9/11 sort of brought about this wave of, I don't know, I guess newer zombie films being made, like right after that time, just kind of making people feel in touch with their lack of control, maybe.
Oh, sure.
There's something to be said about that. I mean, look at what came out during and right after the Vietnam War.
Mhm.
Society tends to try to manage the horrors that it deals with in the real world by creating supernatural events.
Right. Even going further back than that, you could definitely argue that the Godzilla movies were kind of Japan's response to the Second World War.
You mean to America fucking murdering 185,000 people?
Yeah.
Hiroshima.
Makes sense.
Yeah, every culture tends to make art that reflects its trauma. And I would say this is one of a group of films that did that after 9/11.
Oh, sure.
The film was directed by Edgar Wright, born April 18th of 1974 in Poole, Dorset, England. This English filmmaker began his career in 1995 with A Fistful of Fingers, followed by Shaun of the Dead in 2004, Hot Fuzz in 2007, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in 2010, Ant-Man in 2015, and Baby Driver in 2017. I know he had a release out in 2021, but...
Yeah, his most recent film, Last Night in Soho, definitely a horror movie.
So this film was produced by Nira Park, born in December. The year was 1967. Park is a British television and film producer. Received a BAFTA a nomination for their work on Shaun of the Dead. That's the correct response. The award nomination was for Most Outstanding Debut.
So did you know that Shaun of the Dead is part of a trilogy that was named the Three Flavors Cornetto Trilogy?
The Cornetto trilogy, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was because the line in the movie where they got drunk and then the next morning Sean's like, Ed, do you need anything? And he's like, Cornetto. It's because they refer to it as a hangover cure. And so it shows up in Hot Fuzz and then it ends up showing up in The World's End,
Right.
which is the third movie of the trilogy.
Was that Edgar Wright's hangover cure or Nira Park's?
Presumably Edgar Wright and
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
yeah, since they were kind of the creative team behind these movies.
Nice.
Yeah, because Nick Frost and Simon Pegg actually lived together, like in the real world, not just in this movie.
They were flatmates?
Yep. Simon Pegg met Nick Frost because Nick Frost was a waiter and ended up bringing him on the sitcom Spaced, which is a project he worked on with Edgar Wright, even though Nick Frost had no real experience with acting. It was just an example of, this guy is funny. He's my friend. I'm going to bring him in and see what he brings to the show.
That's pretty awesome.
Which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot.
Hell yeah.
And just additional context for people who don't know what a cornetto is, because obviously we don't have them in the United States.
Right.
They're basically drumsticks.
Yeah, the equivalent to a drumstick. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah, it's even got chocolate in the bottom.
Yep.
What a perfect thing to have in the bottom of an ice cream cone.
Right?
Yeah, much better than like mustard or salami.
Sure.
It's even better than ground sausage.
Yeah.
Yeah, cold cuts and condiments do not belong in the bottom of ice cream cones, and I'm glad I live in a world without that.
I kind of want to make a drumstick, and when I'm finishing baking the cone, I want to put like a ham and cheese sandwich in the bottom of it instead of a brick of chocolate.
Gross.
Some venison chunks with some sharp cheddar.
No. Just store-bought, not even go to the deli.
So no liverwurst or sauerkraut.
No, just ham and cheese.
And I feel like this is a very specific cultural experience that maybe not everyone has had, but the weird ham loaf with like chunks of cheese in it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to put in the bottom of my ice cream cones when I make drumsticks.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be gross.
But I'm not going to put it in all of them. I'm only going to put it in I'm going to make like a batch of 10, and I'm going to put it in 3 of them.
Like a chili pepper in the candy bowl kind of scenario.
What kind of a fucking monster would do that?
Hey, watch out for the hook, guys. The bobber just went under. That means I need to reel you both back in. We got to talk about the production of Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, sure.
So,
Okay.
Nira Park, that's where we were left off. In more recent years, they launched a new production company alongside Edgar Wright, Joe Cornish, and Rachel Pryor. Park is best known for her collaborations with Edgar Wright, having produced all of Wright's films over the past 2 decades. On to the plot of Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, shit.
What do you think happens?
I'm going to talk about it a little bit. We're going to really carve into this one. So yeah, we're swiftly introduced to our lovable, hopelessly romantic, and sad protagonist Shaun and his girlfriend Liz.
Much like the protagonists of this podcast.
Shaun is played by Simon Pegg, and Liz is played by Kate Ashfield.
So yeah, a little background on Shaun. He's living a life with little direction, working as an electronic salesman.
I disagree. He's living his best life with his best bud, Ed, played by Nick Frost.
Well, society's going to give him some shit.
Right.
And I don't agree with society, but they're going to give him some shit.
Even his roommate, Pete, who was played by Peter Serafinowicz.
Great actor.
He was giving Shaun shit for not living the life that Pete thought he was supposed to live. But you know what I say? Shaun seemed pretty goddamn happy up until the zombie apocalypse.
Right. He was living his best life.
He was. And I feel like when Liz dumped him, he should have seen that as less of a, hey, I need to get my life sorted out, and more of a, hey, I need to find somebody new to be romantically involved with. Because if you just want to go to the Winchester with your bud, all right, you got to find somebody else that wouldn't mind hanging out at the Winchester with their bud.
Yeah, because like he was paying his rent. He was living his life.
Yes, he was happy and content with what he was doing.
Right.
You know, supporting his friend Ed. But he always had like a live-in video game partner.
Right.
You know, he always had somebody that he could listen to music to and jam with. There's a lot to be said about how much Shaun actually had, and the movie was trying to suggest
Right.
that he had nothing, and I just disagree with that. But go ahead.
Oh, real quick, and a quick dip into context. They imply it in the movie, but they talk about it more explicitly in interviews and special features for this movie. Apparently, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright kind of wrote in that Shaun had failed ambitions to be a DJ, and there just wasn't room to explicitly state it in the runtime.
I felt like it was there.
Well, there was the Creative Records.
Yeah, he had the creative records, and he was kind of scratching and doing his thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't explicitly stated.
Right.
We also learned that records aren't the best weapon or method of killing zombies.
Very fragile.
I will say that that's one of the things that kind of pulled me a little bit out of the movie.
Mhm.
It was very funny, and I enjoyed it a whole lot just because of how ridiculous it was. But I think anyone's going to know that throwing a toaster at a zombie is not going to do the trick.
Shaun and Ed are kind of dumb.
Touche.
Yeah, they do depict a lack of general common sense
Yeah.
between the two. So the film takes place in Crouch End, London, England. Shaun's having this moment with Liz, and she's rather upset by a lot of Shaun's decisions.
Well, one in particular.
Yeah, mostly being friends with Ed. That's the main decision. That
I don't even think that's the big issue. I think it was just the Winchester.
Well,
I feel like if Shaun had been like, hey, let's go to the Cock and Bull, or let's go to the Snooty Teapot. You know, I'm just making up what I think British pubs would be called. I think that if he had just taken her to different pubs instead of just that one,
Sure.
she might have been less annoyed.
Or even just occasionally taking her to a nice restaurant, you know?
sure.
Or a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
But these creatures of habit, they know what they do, and they do what they know. They don't deviate much from that.
Right.
I would like to say that the opening has this awkward interaction between Shaun and Liz, where Liz is explaining that she needs some changes and that she doesn't have a problem with Ed, but that she would like to have some free time, like more just alone time with Shaun.
Mhm.
And there's this like, I'm quite fond of you, Ed. No, I'm not saying I don't like you. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And then it flips it. Liz is talking about her roommates, and her roommates are played by Lucy Davis and Dylan Moran.
Amazing comedian, Dylan Moran.
Dylan Moran is fantastic. He's also from Black Books.
Mhm.
But they have this really awkward exchange where they both take turns saying they like each other's friends, and I really liked how uncomfortable that made me.
Dylan Moran's stand-up is also very funny.
There's also a scene early in the film for me that puts into question, when did this zombie apocalypse really first begin? Because, you know, there's a lot of just staggering and going through the motions of the day-to-day routine, and, you know, I guess maybe taking good times for granted, but just his walk to the general store or whatever after they're, you know, fighting off their hangover, and he goes to grab Ed and himself a couple of snacks, and even just that scene sort of made a lot of sense that they were just pointing at that he had already, you know, almost living his life like a zombie.
Yeah, I mean, there was like several scenes. There's the scene on the bus. There's the scene of people walking through the alleyway.
Yep.
All of this before the supposed zombie apocalypse has even happened. So again, the zombie movie is taking a moment to have a little bit of social commentary, even though this one, I think, was more focused on getting laughs than having commentary.
Certainly.
But it was definitely there.
So back to Shaun and his personal life. He's taking this loss of his love rather hard.
Well, I mean, I think we're skipping a whole part here. They have the conversation where she's like, I want to do something different. And he's like, all right, okay, cool. I'll get us a reservation at a restaurant. And then he completely spaces and forgets. And when he tries to make the reservation, the place is like, we're full up. And his ingenious idea for what they're going to do, since they couldn't get into the restaurant, is to go to the Winchester.
Right.
And that's why they break up.
And he also missed some crucial information through the, what do they call those things again?
Televisions?
No. Well, when his mom calls, his girlfriend calls, and
Oh, the answering machine.
machine.
The answering machine.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's old technology. I always.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have voicemail.
Right. Surely he could find a restaurant that didn't require a reservation
Right.
and just be like, look, I fucked up the reservation, but here's somewhere else we can go.
But his default button is the Winchester,
Right.
so
That's all he's got.
and that's the personal growth that he needs to discover. And the next several pages of my notes are like the map for him that kind of get him there to that personal growth.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, he's taking his broken heart pretty hard. Liz dumps him.
And then he goes to the Winchester.
Yeah, basically. But Shaun's the kind of guy, he just gets a severe lack of respect, even in his workplace. Constantly getting fucked with by colleagues, especially a dickbag named Noel.
Yeah, Noel was played by Raph Spall, and that character deserved to be punched in the mouth.
Right. He was very good at playing a deeply unlikable character.
Yep.
And faces some hardship with family. He endures a strained relationship with his stepdad, Philip, who's also kind of a dickbag at times.
Well, his heart's in the right place. I'd like to say that Penelope Wilton played Barbara, Shaun's mother, and Bill Nighy played Philip. And I gotta say, catching both of those actors for this film,
little like indie jerk off movie, it's pretty great.
Was pretty fucking fantastic because both of them are so good in this movie. Like Philip is standoffish and kind of scary from the get-go. And Barbara is just this adorable mother figure, and she just doesn't want to be a bother. The way that they pulled that off was just fucking chef's kiss.
Yeah, it was very good.
It was just absolutely perfect.
So yeah, as we were saying, Shaun is now getting drunk with his best bud, Ed. Ed is the classic slacker type, light on the hustle, even lower in motivation. Shaun and Ed are throwing back some pints at their favorite pub, the Winchester, and Ed's trying to talk Ed back in.
I mean Shaun. Ed's trying to talk Shaun back in.
What name did I say? Oh my God.
You just threw Ed out a couple of times, which is fine.
Gotcha.
I love Nick Frost. So. We're going to talk more about Nick Frost and Ed, the character. I'm down with that.
So they are now inebriated.
Same.
Huh?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Yeah, they are now inebriated and come home to encounter Ed's flatmate, Pete, who recently suffered a bite from a mugger. And Pete is also a dickbag, and he lays into Shaun pretty hard about getting his shit together.
Rightfully so, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Dude, if you've got to be at work in 4 hours and you're awakened by your roommate just blasting electro, I'd throw his record out the window, too.
Yeah. And he might have an ass kicking coming.
10 years ago, Kane would have, yes.
So by morning, a full zombie outbreak appears to have completely overtaken London. Shaun and Ed are the only two souls to not be cued into that.
Right? They're just oblivious. I love the juxtaposition of the first day when Shaun walks to the store and the second time when he walks to the store, because the only differences are cosmetic.
Right.
That's it. He interacts with the world in the exact same way both times, and I absolutely adored that.
Right.
So yeah, Ed is looking out the window and notices a young lady in the backyard.
There's a girl in the garden.
There's a girl in the garden.
Yeah, she has a name tag that says Mary, and they're trying to get her attention. She's not really, she's in zombie land. They finally do get her attention, and well, they at first think that she's just completely drunk out of her mind, but...
Right.
Do we know who played Bloody Mary, Kane?
No.
Okay.
Well, she was an excellent zombie.
Yeah, she was very good.
One thing to note is that the casting for the zombies and whatnot, they're actually recruited from the spaced fan communities. All of the zombies that we see were this huge response to them calling for a few zombie extras. So they ended up having like 150 zombie extras, and then some local kids saw that they were filming a zombie movie and they wanted to get involved. So they ended up having another 50 zombies made up of local children as well.
Awesome.
I do believe that Bloody Mary, so to speak, I do believe that she was part of that group.
Not entirely correct. Mary was played by Nicola Cunningham, who actually was an established actress and in other things.
I wonder why I couldn't find it anymore.
I just clicked on her IMDb link, so I don't know what your problem is.
Whatever.
So yeah, Shaun and Ed, they try a whole bunch of different objects as weapons against the zombies, and a second zombie shows up in their yard, and they are throwing just about, everything beside the kitchen sink at them. They finally bust into the shed, and then they beat those two zombies to death with a cricket bat.
And a shovel.
Yep.
I like the fact that Shaun and Ed discuss who's going to take what. Just because of the fact that they're like big or little. And Shaun's like, I'll take the small one. And Ed's just like, all right, cool.
I feel like that's a conversation that we would have. Like, which one do you want to get?
Right.
We'd have to negotiate it for sure.
Yeah. And they move slowly enough that they give you plenty of time to have comedic dialogue.
To have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to kind of go for what you're up for, you know?
Joe, do you think it would be a situation, say it was you and I in that backyard.
Yep.
Do you think it would be a situation where I was like, all right, which one do you want? And you'd be like, can you just handle both of these real quick?
Oh man, my back hurts real bad.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to get this.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, Shaun and Ed, they begin to devise a plan to rescue Shaun's mother, Barbara, and his ex-girlfriend, Liz.
But only them. Shaun's plan is to only rescue those two people. Anyone else there, he's just like, doesn't even consider them being there.
Yeah, and so in Crisis, they're kind of going over a few scenarios in their mind of the way this could go.
They sneak in a very funny Night of the Living Dead reference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when they say, "We're coming to get you, Barbara."
Yeah.
To pick up Shaun's mom. That was pretty awesome.
I liked it.
We're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, I love a good tip of the cap from one horror movie to another.
Yeah. I just like how much Ed loves Barbara.
He really does seem to be obsessed with her.
Well, no, it's not his mom, but he's just like kind of inappropriate with some of his jokes.
Right.
But for the most part, especially when they get to the end, right? He is like as concerned about her as or more so than everyone else aside from Shaun. And I really like that too.
Oh, speaking of references, did you notice that the restaurant he tries to make reservations at is Fulci's?
I did.
I thought that was really good.
It's pretty fucking awesome.
So yeah, the final plan is to wind up at the Winchester with everyone after their rescue.
Right. Which is always Shaun's plan.
Always Shaun's plan. That's the default. So they steal Pete's car and pick up Shaun's mom and husband Philip, who's already been bitten.
He's been bitten twice because Ed wrecks Pete's car so that he can drive the Jaguar.
Right.
And while they're kind of arguing a back and forth a bit over who's going where, a zombie attack happens and Philip gets bitten again.
Yep. So then they take Philip's car to pick up Liz and her roommates, David and Diane. Philip and Shaun finally get to a point, near the end of Philip's life before he turns into a zombie, where they begin to reconcile some differences. Philip turns and they have to exit the car. So the group ends up abandoning the vehicle and are forced to sneak around the London neighborhood in avoidance of zombie hordes. They then run into a group of basically doppelganger friends. Like each character has like a person that is their bizarro version, which is kind of awesome. So
the two that I'll mention are going to be Jessica Stevenson. She played Yvonne. And we get a lovely little cameo of Martin Freeman, who is playing her boyfriend. Reese Shearsmith was Mark. Tamsin Craig was Maggie.
Also in Black Books, very funny.
Yes. Julia Deacon was Yvonne's mom. And Matt Lucas is Cousin Tom.
Yeah, so they basically avoid the zombies by imitating them. Then finally the dream is realized. The group has reached the Winchester pub. Shaun remembers that rifle above the bar, and it's locked and loaded.
I think we're missing something that is probably important to the overall plot, JD.
Okay.
They get to the door and it's locked. And Shaun is trying to explain that there's a back door, and then Ed's phone goes off. And when it does, Shaun kind of lights him up, like just kind of tears into him for making him look stupid and all that shit. And while they're having this little tiff, David throws a trash can through the window. And then Shaun, in a very heroic moment, lures the zombies away so that the rest of the group could sneak into the building.
Right.
And then he doubles back, says he's lost the zombies, and then there's a gun and all that stuff. There's some funny stuff that happens with the power. There's like a whole scene before the gun gets involved where they couldn't get the power on, and then Shaun comes back and is able to get the power on, and then Ed ends up like playing, what game was that, Joe? It was something Dracula.
Ooh, ah, Dracula.
Yeah, he starts playing Ooh, ah, Dracula, which I guess was a gambling machine because tokens get spit out. And then hilarity ensues when the zombified owner of the bar.
But those weren't tokens. That's just what British money looks like.
Those were tokens.
So yeah, they find out that the boomstick is for real. Eventually, Shaun's poor mother, it's revealed that she was bitten on their way to the pub.
We're not going to talk about the Queen song and none of that?
Oh, go for it.
Kane, do you just want to do the summary?
No, I don't. All right. I'm just surprised that didn't tick off on JD's radar because it was the funniest part of the movie for me.
It was a very funny moment.
It could be because I'm a big old dummy and that kind of slapstick comedy just tickles me the right way. And I laughed the entire time that scene was playing because they did the thing that is very common for good comedians where they took the joke and they ran it and it was very funny. And then they kept running it, right? Till it stopped being as funny.
And then came back around to being funny again.
And then it came back because of how long they did it.
I like
it came back to being funny again. And it fucking cut me up. And I felt like that should have been. Is it because it's not a horror thing, JD, that it was just very stupid and slapsticky? And you're like, ugh. I don't want to talk about that.
No, I loved it. It was great. I like that they were, beating the bartender or the owner of the Winchester to the rhythm of the song. It was pretty excellent.
See, it's just
I know I could count on you for the most thorough count of that.
I'm so sorry. It was so good. Just the in time to the song. And the fact that it's Don't Stop Me Now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Give me a second. It's just so dumb that it's amazing. It's genius.
Kane's having fun.
Oh my God. It was so good. Just clack, clack, don't stop.
Yeah, perfectly on time. And they're moving around him in a circle.
They are. Oh my God. They're not even hitting him in the head.
In the head, precisely.
And they're pool cues. Like they could have stuck it through an eyeball and just gotten it over with.
They could have, but they didn't. They just did this elaborate choreographed
bonking,
scene.
Yeah. To the tune of Queen's Don't Stop Me Now.
Yeah. Which is a very high energy song.
Yeah.
Very,
So funny story about that. So Simon Pegg said that the fight in the pub was actually choreographed to Don't Stop Me Now, even before it had been cleared to use the film.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So they actually wrote Brian May and begged him to use it.
That's amazing.
Oh, sorry.
Does Brian May own all the rights to Queen's albums?
I mean, I'm sure it's a collective thing, but I imagine that he's got a pretty heavy say over where it's allowed to be used.
I do think that Freddie Mercury and Brian May were like the principal songwriters of Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it would make sense for him to have a lot of like controlling rights.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Then we get the gun.
It's revealed that Shaun's mother has been bitten.
Real goopy bite wound, too.
Yeah, it was very pussy and
gross,
nasty looking. And she's trying to give Liz her blessing on her way out. She's trying to hope that the two will be together or whatever. She's not even aware of their breakup. So she finally passes and then reanimates in zombie form. And David attempts to bust a cap in her. Shaun is absolutely not having it, though.
Yeah, there's this tense standoff.
Really, it's backloaded with history between Shaun and David. He believes that David's in love with Liz.
Accurately so.
Right. And that he also that he hates Shaun and
right.
mostly out of jealousy and other reasons. So the group argues over what's next, but Ed has Shaun's back, of course, and breaks a bottle.
That was also fantastic because Diane's like, this isn't exactly fair, is it? And Ed gives her his broken bottle.
Yeah.
To make it a fair standoff.
It was so good.
Shaun is now dealing with his mother as she transforms into full zombie mode. And all shit breaks loose. The zombie hordes slowly but surely gain entrance to the Winchester. They bust through, the windows, and David gets eaten. He is actually devoured and ripped to
torn
shreds.
To pieces, yeah.
And one of my favorite, most gruesome scenes, probably of any horror/zombie film. It was really another tip of the cap to Dawn of the Dead.
Yep.
That pull apart, that slow, gruesome pull apart with all of the guts and innards. But Diane, David's girlfriend, rushes to avenge him. And I would at first assume that she had been killed, but then the little clip that we'd watch after about, how each character survived or didn't, it was also revealed that she was able to hide in a tree for a while.
Living off of her dead boyfriend's severed leg.
It's interesting that if the zombie bites you, you turn into a zombie, but if you bite the zombie, you don't turn into a zombie?
Well, one would argue that it hadn't had a chance to be infected yet, because they ripped him apart before they bit his, like they didn't get a chance to bite his legs. They ripped the body parts apart.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. They just...
Because she was using it as a cudgel.
Yeah, she really did. She was bludgeoning her way to revenge. So, the zombie version of Pete comes along and ends up... Well, a few people bit Ed, but Pete was the one who got his attention,
right,
and caused the whole situation to unfold.
Right. Foreshadowed by Ed earlier in the movie saying, next time I see him, he's dead.
Yep.
Shaun ends up blowing Pete away in retaliation.
Right through the eyeball.
Exactly. Shaun, Ed, and Liz, they're taking cover behind the bar and begin to set the place ablaze with a bunch of Molotov cocktails. The trio, they take refuge in the cellar below the bar, and their ammo is limited to only 2 shells left. Shaun and Liz, they're contemplating suicide. There's like a whole scene there where they're sort of, talking things out and figuring out how they're going to end their lives. And Ed basically sacrifices himself by allowing himself to be possibly devoured by the zombie horde. And he kind of stays back with the gun. While lighting a cigarette, Shaun discovers a secret hatch to escape.
Which was just like a loading lift for the back of the bar.
And so they escape into the street, and Ed ends up being the hero, saves the day by staying behind with a rifle to take on the zombies alone. And the British Army arrives ever so timely.
I think it was because Yvonne brought them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think there's like this little discussion where she's like, yeah, I told them basically that there were survivors at the Winchester, so that's why they're here.
So then Shaun and Liz, they're brought to safety as the remaining zombies are gunned down.
Again, wasting ammo.
Yeah.
Right, lots of ammo wasted.
Why do they do this every time? That's how you get ammo shortages. It's just single shots to the head, just calm, take your breath.
Although one thing, I know that you hate that, but I will defend it in the sense that it is standard firearm training that you aim center mass, because headshots are hard.
A smaller target.
Yeah.
Right. But these are zombies.
And, guns kick. So it's more reliable in a non-zombie scenario to aim center mass.
But they all know that the only way to take the zombies out is headshots.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be a clip. You just need 1 or 2 bullets.
Sure.
Burst fire. All right. That's what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Again, I have to bring it up again. If it's a full auto weapon, please burst fire. Just do not keep your finger on the trigger.
I didn't know you were such an arms expert.
I'm not. I'm a
just a nerd.
Nerd. Yeah.
You're ready for a zombie invasion. You're prepared. You know what to do.
To die.
It sure doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you're going down swinging.
I mean, probably, but I'm still going down. That's the important part. That's the thing to keep note of, is that, yes, I'm probably going to try to fight. No, I'm not going to succeed. Yes, I'm going to get eaten and be a zombie.
So in the film, it cuts to about 6 months later, where the world is past the crisis, but there are some new normals realized. The surviving zombies are often used for cheap labor or entertainment.
That sounds pretty American, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely so. So Liz and Shaun, they're a thriving young couple, all moved in together. But Shaun can't seem to part with his old pal Ed, who is tethered to something in the shed out back. And he is able to go in there and visit him from time to time and play video games. It seems like he's having just about as much fun with Ed as he had when they were both living.
Probably not the same amount.
Yeah. Especially since Ed was still occasionally trying to eat his face.
Yep. But he was being trained.
Yeah. Before we transition into the cast and crew stuff, one thing that I want to add, because I think it's cool, there's a scene, after the breakup scene when Ed and Shaun are at the Winchester and they're kind of making this plan to go bar hopping. They talk about we'll start with the Bloody Mary and then we'll stagger back here for shots. That scene just outlines the entire rest of the plot of the movie.
Yep.
And I think that's very good and funny.
I think it's very funny. I also think it's fun to point out that the only ad-libbing that was really done in the film was Nick Frost telling Simon Pegg what the people at the bar were doing, like who they were. Because Liz says that they're sad fucks and all
Right.
that. And he ends up going through and making up all those stories
Right.
like on the fly.
Which is really cool. And I think part of it was because the actors were friends in real life.
Yep.
Because the whole movie really kind of felt very ad-libbed. Like it felt very organic.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, so let's go ahead and cover the score real quick.
Sure.
This was done by Pete Woodhead and Daniel Mudford. And it was a really interesting mixture where they actually tried to make it kind of sound like Fabio Frizzi and Goblin. Like they did that on purpose.
I think there was a Goblin song early in the movie.
Well, they actually use musical cues from the original Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, sure.
And also Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Because of this love letter to zombie movies, George Romero actually brought Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright out to be zombies in his film Land of the Dead.
Nice.
There's like a scene where you get to like the debased city and there's a fighting ring where people fight zombies, and there's two zombies tethered to a wall that people take pictures with, and those two zombies are Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg.
That's really cool.
It is. Real quick as well, Joe, cinematographer
Yeah.
and writer.
This movie was written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, who have been collaborating for literal decades. They got their start in British television in the early 90s. Simon Pegg, actor, comedian. I remember hearing that he got his start in writing and moved on to acting, but looking at his filmography, it doesn't seem to confirm that.
Right.
He got into both around the same time, working in TV for the BBC. And yeah, he worked on the Cornetto movies. And then aside from that, the closest he got to horror as a screenwriter was Truth Seekers, the Ghost Hunters parody from
Yeah.
2020.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was very funny. And then they didn't give it a second season.
Of course they didn't, because I liked it.
I'm not going to talk too much about Edgar Wright just because he's been talked up already. So
All right, let's go ahead and move on to special effects.
I can talk about cinematography if you want.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
If you want, I don't have to.
Just fucking do it, Joe. All right?
Yeah, well. This movie was shot on 35mm film using ARRI cameras. The director of photography was David M. Dunlap, who mostly worked in television and never in horror, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. Specifically because Edgar Wright, at least at this point, I don't know if he's still doing it, was known for, in his collaboration with Simon Pegg, storyboarding out a lot of the movie before they even started shooting it. So a lot of the shots were planned preemptively. It wasn't really as much David Dunlap as much as Simon Pegg saying, no, point the camera this way. And then the actors are going to come around into the frame from this direction. He had that shit planned out.
Right.
But I am going to comment just some technical stuff in that this movie was a fun blend of the visual language of horror movies, like a lot of slow pans and shots from low angles, with the kind of Edgar Wright, like almost music video-y, like jump cuts and snapshots and really quick edits, punctuated usually with some kind of noise. That was kind of the style that Edgar Wright constructed for himself over time.
It's very, very interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, JD, special effects.
You got it, babe. The main special effects artist was Catherine Hart, who also worked on Hannibal Rising of 2007. That was one of the Silence of the Lamb sequels.
Not great.
I disagree. I think that was a pretty fun movie. Maybe one day we'll have that as part of one of our episodes. Catherine Hart had 10 special effects credits in total, beginning in 2003 with Matrix Revolution. I mentioned that just because it's a little sci-fi. Other than that, not much horror for Catherine. An important artist, though, for a lot of the prosthetic effects that we were witness to. There was some CGI in the film, but still a pretty decent amount of prosthetic effects. And that would be prosthetic effect artist Dan Fry. And Dan Fry has a hell of a repertoire here. Dan started his career in horror in 1987 with a film titled Plutonium Baby.
Huh.
And in the same year, It's Alive Part 3, then a bunch of films in 1988, Wes Craven's classic Shocker in 1989.
Nice.
Yeah. Basket Case 2 in 90. Worked on the very first episode of The Walking Dead in 2009. And also worked on Prometheus in 2012. Dan Fry, though, was responsible for constructing a lot of the Mostly the scene where David was ripped to bits, ripped limb from limb. There were a lot of exploding bladder effects in this film, like blood bursts, especially like anytime you'd see someone take a gunshot wound, and a lot of like the stabbing effects. Basically just a latex pouch filled with like fake blood, and it would burst on cue. So there was a lot of those types of things used, and all of the bites, like the makeup, a lot of the horror film makeup, all of that stuff was part of that as well. So that's about as far as I went into the special effects.
Cool.
Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and go over personal experience with the film. Joe, start us off.
Yeah, I remember seeing this movie on the shelves of stores, and that looks interesting. And I'd look at it and like, zombie romantic comedy. I don't know if that's my thing, and I just kind of disregarded it and moved on. And then my friend Shaun, weird coincidence, gave it to me because he bought it and he tried to watch it with his grandfather, and they said fuck a bunch in it, and he was just like, I can't have this, so he gave it to me. And I'm like, okay, sure, it's a free movie, I'll watch it. And I wound up really liking it. And then he joined the Navy and got real conservative.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So does this movie remind you of the friendship that you lost with this person?
Not specifically. Like occasionally I will have that moment of remorse of like, oh, that sucks that happened with that friendship. But this movie isn't specifically tied to it.
Okay, good.
And that's my Shaun of the Dead story. I really like this movie. It's a lot of fun. And it's funny that I wouldn't have watched it unless I was given it for free. Because I then continued to watch Edgar Wright movies, and I've enjoyed every one that I've seen.
Right. All right, JD. Oh, wait, Joe.
Huh? Zombie rating.
Zombie rating, yeah.
The zombies in this movie are good. They're good-looking zombies. They have the benefit of all of, the advancements that horror makeup artists came up with leading up to the making of this movie. So they're good-looking zombies. At no point, because again, it's a comedy, am I particularly afraid of them.
Right.
Even when the movie establishes stakes and like people get taken out, I don't personally feel threatened by the zombies. So I would say solid 3 out of 5.
Excellent. Now, JD.
As far as this film goes, I do agree that a lot of the terror one might experience during a zombie apocalypse was overshadowed by the warm romantic comedy aspects of the film, but I still feel that there was enough subtlety in the actual makeup effects and the special effects involved that they do kind of show you a few things in some new ways. Well, some new old ways, because there were one of the things that I loved about this film when I saw it, in the theater when it came out, and one of the things that I recognized immediately were all of the individual nods that this film gives to other horror films before it. Even the scene where the girl in the garden who was pushed through, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was like a hollow, like a post in the ground, and she fell backward.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. I never thought about that before.
But it pierces her, and it works almost like a hollow piercing needle, and it removed a big chunk of her abdomen that remained gaping. And there was a movie, I want to say maybe in the late 80s, early 90s, titled Death Becomes Her, and there was a wound created in the abdomen of, I believe it was Goldie Hawn, and you could see they did that cinematography trick where, they're showing you, and I believe that was also a CGI effect, but they kind of show you an actor through a hole in another actor. So there was that, and the fact that the movie is, almost comes to its end in the basement or the cellar of the Winchester. It's like a little bit of a throwback to Night of the Living Dead, just the location and the way things looked. And, when this film kind of goes from being a comedy to a zombie film, the contrast of everything kind of goes up and the scenes become a little darker, even though it's still kind of, a lighter hearted mood. The overall aesthetic of the film kind of darkens, and a lot of that happens through the lighting and some of the visual effects involved.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, as far as my personal impression goes, that's really all I could say about the film. It's definitely one of my favorites, and one of the more gruesome, actually, one of the more gruesome zombie films to date. And definitely it had all the advantages of the films to come before it as far as like the technical and prosthetic effects go. You know, through those nods to the classic films, this movie was able to tell its own story with the benefit of all of those grotesque, sights to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of is what made it special for me. And despite the romantic and comedic aspects of it, I still kind of found a lot of the zombies in the film to be pretty realistic and disturbing. And so that leads me to my zombie rating. And for these, I would give them, based on a few factors, they were very slow and they were fairly benign in terms of the damage that they could do. But once they got a hold of you, the damage they could do is reflected well through the character of David at the end.
Right.
These zombies could shred a living human to bits. So just knowing that that's their full capacity, the worst of their wrath, they're still pretty terrifying. I'm going to go ahead and give these zombies a 4 based off of the visual factor is probably the strongest aspect. Their ferocity, a little bit less, but still, they're capable zombies. They're less capable than the 28 Days Later zombies or the Return of the Living Dead zombies. Those ones are a lot smarter, but these zombies seem to be kind of lights were off in the attic, but they could still do some damage. So, yeah, like I said, I gave them a 4.
Right on.
So, yeah, how about your personal impression of the film, Kane?
I saw the movie when it was released in theaters. As soon as it became available to purchase, I bought it on DVD, and it was part of my collection. I thought it was, and rightfully so, thought it was a beautiful comedic love letter to the zombie movies of the past. I liked the fact that the characters were very realistic. Even the hero that's supposed to save the day kind of sucks at being a hero. And pretty much, if you watch the movie from beginning to end, you realize pretty early on that it's kind of Shaun's fault that everybody died.
Right.
It's kind of his poor planning. Like, the Winchester was a terrible place to hole up during a zombie apocalypse. They probably would have been way better off if they had actually just stayed at Liz's flat, because it was multiple stories up. You know, even if the zombies broke through on the bottom level, they could have barricaded themselves in and waited until the army inevitably showed up, which I think is what that's saying. Like, at the end, when the army does show up and starts laying down zombies, you realize that if they had, because it's one day, it's not even like 2 days, it's like one full day it took for the military to show up and start putting zombies down.
Yeah. They were always coming.
They were always coming. Yeah. So it's kind of Shaun's fault that everybody died. If he hadn't gone and managed Philip, his mom probably would have died no matter what.
Right.
But I feel like David, Diane, Ed, if they would have just gone to Liz's flat and just hung out there and waited for it to go over or blow over, they probably would have been fine.
Oh, sure.
But I do love this film, and I like rewatching it every year or so. Zombie rating, I thought the zombies were great. I loved them. Again, they definitely felt like an homage to George Romero's zombies, and those are my favorites. So because of that, I'm going to give them a 4.
Right on.
And that's all I got to say about that. I love this movie.
Hell yeah.
Does anybody have anything else to say?
No, I'm good. Let's get the fuck out.
All right. If you watched Shaun of the Dead, let us know what you think. You can find us wherever podcasts live, as well as at wegiveYouBrainworms.com. If you are YouTubing, please remember to like and subscribe.
And click the bell.
And click on that bell. Next week, we're watching a personal favorite of mine, Cemetery Man. I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that one, so that should be fun.
It's going to be fun. I'm excited that you haven't seen it yet.
Au revoir. Rob Zombie. So no liverwurst or sauerkraut.